My name is Miles Corvin, and I have been called many things. Sergeant, soldier, veteran, ghost. Monster. The last one came from a child, a human child, back on Earth, back before everything changed. She was maybe 6 years old, pigtails, strawberry ice cream dripping down her wrist, standing in a supermarket aisle in Tucson, Arizona. She looked up at my face and said it plainly without cruelty, the way children say true things. "Mommy, why does that man look like a monster?" Her mother shushed her and yanked her away down the cereal aisle, shooting me an apologetic, horrified glance. I didn't blame the kid. The left side of my face is a roadmap of everything the war gave me, and nothing it took back. Degree burn scarring from the jaw to the temple, the ear reduced to a melted ridge of cartilage, the eye, my left eye, replaced after Kandahar with a military-grade ocular implant that glows faintly amber in low light. My left hand is prosthetic carbon fiber and titanium, military spec, capable of crushing a steel pipe or threading a needle depending on the day's mood. My right hand is real but scarred deep enough that the skin looks like old leather stretched over wire. I am 6'3", 230 pounds of scar tissue, military hardware and bad decisions. The kid wasn't wrong. That was 2019, Earth time, before the veil tore open above the Pacific, before the Keth came. Before everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe got rewritten in fire and blood, and the strange, impossible grace of first contact. By the time I stood on the observation deck of the UES Relentless in 2041 and looked out at a star system that didn't have a human name yet, I had been called monster by better people than a 6-year-old girl in Tucson. But I'd never been asked if a monster could be a daddy. Not until her. Chapter 2, The Relentless and Her Crew. The *U Relentless was not a beautiful ship. Beautiful ships had clean lines and swept hulls, and the kind of aesthetic that made recruiting posters look good. The Relentless was a United Earth Space Force heavy assault carrier, 2.5 kilometers of reinforced titanium alloy, ceramic composite plating, point defense clusters, and enough firepower to sterilize a small moon. She had been built for war, upgraded for war, and scarred by war in ways that her engineers patched rather than replaced. She looked, in other words, a lot like me. I was her Master Chief Miles Corvin, UESF Special Operations, 22 years of service, 8 deployments across 3 wars, 2 human, 1 otherwise, and the kind of service record that made admirals either promote you or keep you as far from political visibility as possible. They had chosen the latter. The Relentless was on a survey and security assignment in the outer reach, which was a polite way of saying we were chasing ghosts at the edge of explored space, far enough from Earth that nobody with rank had to think about me very often. I was fine with that. My quarters were small, my routine was iron disciplined, and the crew left me alone in the way that people leave alone things they are not quite sure are safe. The enlisted soldiers who served under me were professional and capable, and treated me with the particular deference that extreme competence sometimes earns when it comes wrapped in a face like mine. I ran drills at 500, I ate alone. I spent my off hours in the ship's small observation bay, watching stars that no human being had named yet, thinking the kind of thoughts that don't have good language attached to them. That was my life. That was enough. Until the distress signal. Chapter 3, Signal from the Dark. It came in on a frequency that wasn't in any human database. Not Keth, not Vorath, not any of the 7 spacefaring species humanity had encountered since the veil tore open. The Relentless SAI, a mid-generation unit the crew had nicknamed Oracle, flagged it immediately and routed it to the bridge. I was in the armory when my comm buzzed. Master Chief Corvin to the bridge. Captain Yara Osai's voice, clipped, precise, the faint lilt of her Ghanaian accent sharpened by 20 years of command. "We have something unusual." Unusual asterisk on a UESF heavy carrier could mean anything from a micrometeorite strike to a god waking up in the dark between stars. I had seen both. I put down the rifle component I was cleaning, pulled on my jacket, and made my way forward. The bridge of the asterisk Relentless was a cathedral of dim blue light and quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Commander Park had the navigation station. Ensign Vasquez was running the sensor array. Captain Osai stood at the center display, hands clasped behind her back, looking at a holographic map of the local star system. A single pulsing red dot blinked on the third planet. "What is it?" I asked. Oracle answered before Osai could. The AI's voice was gender-neutral, slightly too calm, the kind of calm that is programmed rather than felt. "The signal is a distress beacon of unknown manufacture. It is broadcasting on a frequency consistent with emergency communications, but uses an encoding architecture I have not encountered in any known species database. The signal has been broadcasting for approximately 3 weeks based on degradation modeling." 3 weeks. I looked at the planet. It was small, rocky, with a thin nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, breathable barely, rust-colored continents, small oceans the color of old blood. Anyone else in range? "Negative," Osai said. "We're the only UESF vessel within 4 light towers." She looked at me with the careful expression she wore when she was about to ask me to do something she wasn't entirely comfortable asking. "I want a ground team, Miles. Scout the source, assess the situation, report back before we commit to anything larger." "Understood." I was already turning toward the door. "I'll take Chen and Bashir." "Take Vasquez, too. She's the best we have with unknown technology." I nodded once and left. Chapter 4 Descent. The drop shuttle broke atmosphere at 3:40 ship time, rattling through cloud layers the color of ash. Corporal Lin Chen, small, fast, 9 years in, the best close-quarters fighter I had ever worked with, and a person who expressed affection exclusively through insults, sat to my left checking her sidearm for the 4th time. Sergeant Dawit Bashir, tall, methodical, the kind of man who read philosophical texts between firefights and spoke 4 languages, sat across from me reviewing atmospheric data on his tablet. Ensign Rosa Vasquez, 26, brilliant, perpetually nervous in the way that brilliant people are when they are aware of everything that can go wrong, gripped her sensor kit and stared at the hull as if she could see through it. "Breathable air," Vasquez said, reading from her instruments as we descended. "Just barely. 0.21 oxygen, acceptable nitrogen ratio, CO2 slightly elevated but within tolerable range. Temperature at the surface is," she paused, "cold, 4 degrees Celsius. Wind." "Weather gear," I said. Everyone nodded. The shuttle set down in what Oracle had identified as the signal's origin point, a wide, flat basin between 2 low ridgelines, the ground covered in something that might have been vegetation once, now frozen and gray. In the shuttle's lights, the landscape looked like the surface of a dead moon that had almost managed to be a world. We geared up in silence. I checked my weapons, sidearm, assault configuration pulse rifle, the combat blade at my thigh that I had carried since Kandahar and would carry until I died, and stepped out into the cold. The wind hit immediately, bitter, thin, carrying dust and the smell of something mineral and old. We spread into a standard sweep formation and moved toward the beacon. It took 11 minutes to find the crash site. Chapter 5 The Wreck. Whatever it had been, it had come down hard. The spacecraft, and it was a spacecraft, unmistakably, even in the ruin of its landing, had plowed a furrow 200 meters long through the basin floor before breaking apart against the far ridgeline. The main hull section, maybe 40 meters of crumpled alloy, lay half buried in the frozen earth. Smaller debris fields fanned out to either side. "Unknown configuration," Vasquez said quietly, her scanner working steadily. Hull metallurgy doesn't match anything in the database. Propulsion system. I think I see a drive core, but the geometry is wrong for anything we know. She paused. This thing came a long way. Bashir crouched by a fragment of hull, examining it carefully. There's writing here, or what might be writing, pictographic possibly. Chen had her weapon up and was scanning the perimeter. I've got something on thermals, she said. Her voice was flat and professional, but I heard the edge under it. Inside the hull section, multiple heat signatures. I held up a fist. Everyone stopped. Multiple. How many? I asked. Hard to say, the hull's interfering with the scan. Chen adjusted her scope. At least 2, maybe more, small. A pause, Chief. Some of them read really small. I stood for a moment in the wind and the dark and the mineral cold of this unnamed world, weighing the math of caution against the math of 3 weeks and a distress beacon. We go in, I said. Vasquez, stay at the entry point with a line open to the ship. Chen, you're on my left. Bashir, right. Watch the footing, this thing could be structurally compromised. We moved to the breach in the hull. It was large enough to walk through upright, the edges of the metal curled outward by some explosive event. I clicked on my helmet light and stepped inside. The interior of the ship was dark and cold, and smelled of things I had no names for. The layout was alien in the literal sense. Nothing was where a human engineer would have put it. The corridors were the wrong shape. The ceiling was too low in places and too high in others. We picked our way forward over debris and fallen structural members, following Chen's thermal scanner. The first sound I heard was so unexpected that I stopped walking. A child. Somewhere in the dark ahead of us, a child was crying. Chapter 6, What We Found. I have been in a lot of dark places. I have walked through burning buildings and collapsed tunnels, and the kind of silence that follows a firefight when you are not yet sure if it is over. I have been afraid in ways that the human body was designed to be afraid of, and ways that it was not. The sound of that crying hit me somewhere below the rational mind. I moved faster. The main compartment of the ship, what might have been a combination living space and bridge, was accessible through a hatch that had been partially blown open by the impact. I squeezed through, Chen behind me, and raised my helmet light. There were 7 of them. The species was unknown, bipedal, but slimmer than humans, with limbs that bent at slightly different angles, skin the color of deep water, blue-gray, shifting faintly in the light, large eyes with horizontal pupils that reflected amber in my helmet beam. Their faces were structured differently from human faces, the nose a flatter ridge, the mouth slightly wider, the ears higher and more mobile, swiveling toward us as we entered. 4 adults, 3 children. No, I corrected myself as I looked more carefully. 2 adults, 2 who might have been adolescents, close to adult size but with the proportional softness of youth. 3 children, ranging in apparent age from perhaps 2 years old to perhaps 8, in whatever their species counted as years. Of the 2 adults, one was clearly dead. She lay against the far wall, her body half covered by debris, her eyes open and glazed. The other, a male, I thought, though I wasn't sure I had the biology right, was alive but barely. He was propped against the wall near the children, his right arm bent at a wrong angle, his torso wrapped in improvised bandaging that was dark with dried fluid. His large eyes found mine, and his body went rigid with what I recognized across species lines, across biology, across everything. Terror. He moved, despite his injuries, placing himself between us and the children. That too I recognized. I lowered my weapon. Slowly, deliberately, making the motion as clear as I could. Behind me, Chen did the same. Bashir, coming through the hatch, read the room in one glance and kept his hands visible and his rifle down. The injured male watched us with those enormous horizontal pupil eyes. His chest was heaving. One of the adolescents had moved to his side, supporting him, and was watching us with an expression that I could only read as asterisk please. The three small children were huddled together at the back of the compartment. And then the smallest one, the one who couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 of whatever years her species counted, toddled forward, around the injured adult, and stopped 3 feet in front of me. She looked up. I looked down. She was tiny. The top of her head came to mid-thigh on me. Her skin was that deep blue-gray, her eyes enormous and amber irised, her hair, if it was hair, a soft cloud of darker blue-black that drifted slightly in the recycled air like something underwater. She was wearing a small garment that had once been a cheerful green, now dirty and torn. She had been crying, the tracks were visible on her face, and her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked at my scarred face, my glowing amber eye, my prosthetic hand. She did not run. She reached out one small hand and touched the scarred side of my face. 2 fingers feather-light, curious rather than afraid. She said something in her language, soft, small sounds. I had no idea what she said. But she didn't look afraid of me. That I had no idea what to do with. Part 2, The Weight of Small Things. Chapter 7, Language of Necessity. We spent the first hour in a careful, painstaking negotiation with no words. The injured adult, I started calling him elder in my head, though he might have been 30 or 130 for all I knew, watched us with desperate, exhausted wariness, while I used every piece of non-threatening body language I had ever learned across 3 wars and one very strange diplomatic incident involving the Keth. Hands open. Movement slow, no sudden gestures. Vasquez, whom I had called inside after the first 5 minutes when it became clear this was a medical and diplomatic situation more than a security one, was doing something remarkable. She had pulled up the ship's translation module, a state-of-the-art system built on the linguistic frameworks of all known spacefaring species, and was recording every sound the aliens made, feeding it into a comparative analysis, building something from nothing. "It's going to take time," she murmured to me. "There's no root language to anchor to, but there are structural patterns. The grammar is," she trailed off, her eyes moving rapidly over her display. "It's incredibly regular, almost mathematical. Like they built the language with deliberate elegance." While Vasquez worked, Bashir had moved slowly, carefully, to the injured adult. Bashir had been a field medic before he became a soldier, or maybe always both, and he spoke in quiet, unhurried tones as he examined the wounds, the tone doing the work the words couldn't. The adolescent who had been supporting Elder translated our movements to the smaller children in soft, rapid sounds. I watched the children watch us. The smallest one, the tiny girl who had touched my face, had not gone back to the group. She sat on a piece of debris 2 feet from me, cross-legged, watching me with enormous eyes. Every time I looked at her, she stared back with an expression of complete, solemn attention, as if I were a complicated puzzle she had decided to solve. I sat down on the floor, cross-legged, mirroring her. I was big enough that even sitting I loomed, but it was the best I could do. She cocked her head, the hair cloud drifted. I held out my real hand, palm up, fingers spread. The universal gesture, maybe not universal, I had no data on that, of look, nothing in it, I am not a threat. She looked at my hand for a long moment. Then she placed her tiny hand in mine. Her hand was warm. The skin had a faint texture, smoother than human skin, and the fingers were slightly longer in proportion. She had 4 fingers and a thumb, same as me, or close enough to same. She said something. 2 syllables, repeated it, looking at me expectantly. "I don't know what that means," I said quietly. "I'm sorry." She tilted her head the other way. Then she pointed at herself and said the 2 syllables again. Her name, she was telling me her name. I pointed at myself, Miles. She tried it, Meols, the sound slightly wrong but unmistakably an attempt. I nodded. She pointed at herself again. Lyra. We sat like that, trading our names back and forth, while the ship's wind whistled through the breach and Vasquez built a bridge out of mathematics. Chapter 8 What Bashir Found. The medical report was not good. Bashir pulled me aside while the larger children distracted the smallest ones with what appeared to be a simple game, some kind of hand-clapping sequence that produced soft chiming sounds from small devices worn on their wrists. The adult male has 3 broken ribs, a fracture in the left arm, and what I think is internal bleeding, Bashir said quietly, his face grave. I've done what I can with our field kit, but he needs real medical care. Ship's medical bay or better. The woman. He shook his head. I absorbed that. The children. Physically, they're okay. Cold, hungry, dehydrated, but no serious injuries. They were in some kind of impact cushioning system when they came down. I found the harness marks. Someone strapped them in before impact. He paused. The adult male did that, with his injuries. He strapped them in before he got clear himself. I looked over at Elder, who was watching us with those enormous eyes. The adolescent girl, I had started thinking of her as Kessa, though I didn't know her name, had her arm around him, speaking quietly. And the adolescents. The girl has a sprained wrist she's been ignoring. The boy seems fine physically, but he hasn't spoken since we arrived. Shock, I think. I nodded. We're bringing them up. All of them. Get Captain Ose on the line. I need the medical bay prepped, and I need Oracle working on translation support from Vasquez's recordings. Bashir nodded and moved away. I walked back to the main compartment. Lyra was still sitting where I'd left her. She had acquired in my absence a small object, a toy of some kind, a smooth ovoid shape that fit in both her hands, and was holding it out to me as I approached. Offering. I crouched down and accepted it with my real hand. It was warm from her hands, and when I held it, it pulsed once with a faint light. Some kind of stored energy object, maybe, or just a toy that responded to body warmth. I handed it back carefully. She clutched it to her chest and looked up at me. She said something. Several words, more complex than asterisk Lyra or meols. Her voice was matter-of-fact, serious, the way small children are sometimes serious about the things that matter most to them. I don't understand yet, I said, but I will. I promise. She nodded as if she understood the promise, if not the words. Maybe she did. Chapter 9, the translation breaks through. 48 hours after we brought them aboard the Asterisk Relentless, Oracle achieved what Vasquez called a Level 2 linguistic framework, not full translation, but enough for basic communication. The species called themselves the Velhari. The ship had been a colony transport, diverted from its original course by a Cascade navigation failure. The adult male, his name was Sovereign Dale, and he had been a teacher on his homeworld, had been trying to reach the nearest Velhari colony beacon for 3 weeks. The woman who died in the crash had been his sister. Lyra was his daughter. She was 4 years old in Velhari years, which Oracle calculated as roughly equivalent to 3.5 Earth years. Her mother had died 18 months ago, a disease. It had taken her quickly. I learned this from Oracle's translations of Sovereign's halting, exhausted account, delivered from the medical bay bed where Bashir and Dr. Amara Oy, the ship's chief medical officer, were working to stabilize his internal bleeding. Kessa, whose actual name was Velith, close enough that I kept the mental nickname, translated for the younger children. Lyra sat in the medical bay's observation room, on the other side of the transparent barrier from her father, watching him with the particular stillness of a child who has learned that stillness is sometimes required and does not understand why. I sat beside her. This had become, over 48 hours, a pattern neither of us had planned. She went where I went, or appeared where I arrived, as if she had decided something about me and was implementing it with complete, unilateral calm. The crew watched this with expressions ranging from bemused to quietly emotional. Chen, who expressed affection through insults, said, "Great! You've been adopted by an alien toddler. That's definitely in the mission parameters." I had no response to that. "She called you something," Vasquez told me that second day, reviewing her translation logs. "When she first saw you, in the ship." "What did she say?" Vasquez looked at her screen. "The direct translation doesn't quite work in English, but the closest approximation is," she paused, "something like the large guardian, or more literally, the big safe one." I sat with that for a moment. The big safe one. This small being, 4 years old, who had lost her mother, who had been through a crash and 3 weeks of cold and fear and her father's injuries and the death of her aunt, had looked at my ruined face and my glowing eye and my metal hand, and had thought, "Safe." I did not know what to do with that either. But I was starting to have an idea. Chapter 10, The Question. It was on the 4th day that she asked it. Sovereign Dale was improving slowly, with the careful progress of a body that had been pushed hard and was now, grudgingly, accepting help. Oracle's translation capability was up to level 4, which meant real conversations, if simple ones. Lyra had been allowed brief visits to her father's bedside, and I had accompanied her because she would not go without me, gripping 2 fingers of my prosthetic hand with both of her small ones. We had developed a routine, she and I meals together in the medical bay common area. She had decided that human food was interesting, with strong preferences for anything sweet and violent objections to anything with a texture she categorized as *wrong. Morning and evening, she would drag me to the observation bay and stand on the bench with her hands on the transparent panel and look at stars, saying their Velhari names softly, as if reciting something important. At night she slept in the medical bay's family quarters, in a small bed that Dr. Oy had configured with extra warmth, with Velith nearby and Sovereign within calling distance. On the 4th evening, she and I were in the observation bay. The stars here were dense, we were in a region of relatively rich stellar formation, and the view was genuinely spectacular. I was sitting on the bench. Lyra was standing on it beside me, her hands on the panel, her face close to the transparisteel, her breath making small fog ghosts that appeared and vanished. She had been quiet for a while, which I had learned was unusual for her. Lyra was not a quiet child. She narrated the world in a constant low stream of Velhari that Oracle was getting better at parsing, pointing at things and naming them, and expecting me to repeat them, and judging my pronunciation with devastating accuracy. The silence meant she was thinking. She turned from the stars and looked up at me. Her eyes in the starlight were extraordinary, the amber irises lit from within, the horizontal pupils somehow making her gaze feel ancient and enormous. She had her toy ovoid in her hands, turning it in small circles. She asked her question. Oracle translated it immediately, the words appearing on the small display built into my jacket cuff, as had become standard in my interactions with her. "Can monsters be daddies?" The observation bay was very quiet. I looked at her for a long moment. She was watching me with the absolute seriousness of a very small person asking a very important question, not afraid, not confused, genuinely asking. The question had the shape of something she had been working toward for 4 days, circling it, building up to it. I understood why she was asking me. "What made you think of that?" I asked. Oracle translated. She pointed at my face, specifically at the scarred side, then at my glowing eye, then at my prosthetic hand. Then she made a gesture toward the ship at large, the soldiers, the weapons, the combat-ready everything of a heavy assault carrier. You are what made me think of that." She said something more. Oracle translated. Velith said the beings on this ship are warriors. Warriors fight. My father said some warriors are dangerous. The cook said, a pause while Oracle parsed, that you are the most dangerous one. She called you, another pause, longer. She called you the monster with the ghost eye. I thought about Corporal Chen, who worked in the mess on rotation and had a mouth like a broken dam. We were going to have words. But Lyra wasn't done. You do not feel like a monster, she said. You feel like, the translation stuttered. Oracle flagged a cultural concept without direct English equivalent. The closest approximation appeared on my cuff, shelter, warmth, home. You feel like shelter, she said. My father feels like that. My father is my daddy. So I am asking, can the big safe one also be? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I looked at this small alien child, 4 years old, who had decided in the logic of her grief and her fear, and her extraordinary heart that she had found something in me worth asking about. I sat with the question for a long time. The stars moved past us in their ancient, indifferent courses. I don't know, I said finally. I don't know if I can be, but I think that is one of the most important questions anyone has ever asked me. Oracle translated, Lyra listened. Then she climbed into my lap. She did this sometimes, with the complete unself-consciousness of the very young, simply deciding a thing and doing it, and sat there looking at the stars. I let her. After a while she fell asleep, her head against my chest, her toy clutched in both hands. I sat very still and looked at the stars and thought about the question. Part 3, What Monsters Carry? Chapter 11, Sovereign. I talked to Sovereign Dale properly for the first time on the 6th day. He was sitting up in his medical bed, his arm in a printed cast that Dr. Oy had calibrated to Velhari bone density, his color better, his breathing easier. The internal bleeding had been addressed by a surgery that had required Oy, Bashir, and 3 desperate hours, with Oracle translating Velhari physiology texts that Velith had found on a backup drive from the ship. Lyra was asleep in the next room. I had checked twice. Sovereign watched me settle into the chair beside his bed, with the expression I had come to recognize in him, complex, layered, a careful man doing careful thinking. He had the bearing of a scholar, which I had not expected. His hands, when he moved them, had the deliberate gestures of someone accustomed to being listened to. You saved our lives, he said. Oracle translated his Velhari into my earpiece. We answered a distress signal, I said. That's what we do. You stayed, he looked at me steadily. You could have moved us to the ship and maintained distance. Standard first contact protocol. I know enough about spacefaring societies to understand there is always a protocol. You stayed. I didn't have a good answer for that. Lyra has bonded with you, he said, not accusingly. Observationally. I'm aware. She does not do this randomly, he paused. She is not a random child. She has her mother's ability to read the truth of people. Her mother could walk into a room and in 10 minutes tell you who in it was worth knowing. Lyra inherited this. A very long pause. She has been grieving. For her mother, yes, but also she has not had safety. Not real safety, not the kind a child needs since her mother died. I have tried very hard. But I am one person, and I was also grieving, and we were traveling, looking for a place to settle, and he stopped. I am telling you more than is appropriate. No, you're not, I said. He looked at me. I'm a soldier, I said. I've spent 22 years operating on need to know. I'm done with that. Tell me what I need to know. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, She asked you if a monster could be a daddy. Yes. What did you say? I said I didn't know. He nodded slowly. That was honest. Another pause. I heard her ask it. My Velhari ears are good even when the rest of me is broken. I heard her ask and he stopped, looked at the ceiling. I have been trying to decide how I feel about it. How do you feel about it? He looked at me directly. Grateful, he said, terrified, humbled. He looked down at his hands. She has been watching you for 6 days. She has been testing you in the way children test the adults they are considering trusting. You do not frighten her. You have not disappointed her. For Lyra, that is, he searched for the word. That is not a small thing. I know. I need to ask you something, he said, directly. As one father too, he stopped, considered his word choice. As one person responsible for her to another. Ask. What are your intentions toward my daughter? The question was direct, simple, loaded with 4,000 years of parental instinct. I respected it. I don't know yet, I said. I know that she matters. I know that what she asked me is something I'm still thinking about. I know that I would not harm her for anything in this universe. I paused. I know that I've been alone for a long time and I had decided that was fine, and she has made me reconsider some things I thought were settled. Sovereign Dale looked at me for a long, assessing moment. You are not what you appear to be, he said finally. Most things aren't, I said. Something that might have been a smile moved across his features. Velhari facial expressions were close enough to human to read mostly, with some margin of error. Lyra said as much, in her terms. He settled back against his pillow. She told Velith that you are a *Karath who forgot what he was. Oracle flagged the word. Cultural concept, Karath. The translation that came back was imperfect but suggestive. Guardian spirit, protector. The one who stands between the small ones and the dark. She has decided you are a protector, Sovereign said, who learned somewhere to show only the outside. I had no response to that. My daughter, Sovereign continued quietly, has very good judgment. Better than most people 3 times her age. I'm starting to understand that. Chapter 12, History Lesson. On the 8th day, Captain Os requested a private meeting. Yara Os was a compact, immovable woman of 53, with a face that had learned to show only what she chose to show and eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded 3 ships before the Relentless. She had navigated first contact with 2 species and a diplomatic incident with a third that had nearly ended her career. She was, in my assessment, one of the best commanding officers in the UESF, and one of the most uncomfortable people I had ever worked for because she was the rare kind of commander who actually asked questions she expected you to answer honestly. She sat across from me in her ready room with a cup of tea and a look that I recognized. Talk to me about the Velhari child, she said. Lyra. Yes, Lyra, she watched me over her tea. The crew is calling her our ship's daughter. Chen has knitted her a hat. Chen knitted. Don't tell Chen I told you. She'll deny it and then hide in the armory for a week. Os set down her cup. Miles, I've known you for 6 years. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Like a person who's found something. She said it without sentiment, simply as a statement of observed fact. I'm not criticizing. I'm trying to understand the situation. The situation, I said carefully, is that we rescued a Velhari family from a distressed vessel. The father is recovering. The children are safe. We are working on contacting the nearest Velhari colony beacon to arrange transfer. Yes, Osa agreed. That's the official situation. She looked at me steadily. And the unofficial situation. I was quiet for a moment. The child has decided something about me, I said, and I'm still deciding what I think about it. Osai nodded as if this confirmed something. I've been in contact with UESF Command about the Velhari. They're excited new species contact, potential diplomatic relationship, all the usual. She paused. And they want the Velhari transferred to a diplomatic station as quickly as possible. Standard new contact protocol. I felt something shift in my chest, not pleasant. Timeline. We've located a Velhari beacon relay. A colony ship can meet us at a rendezvous point in approximately 12 days. She watched my face. The father will be well enough to travel by then. The children are fine now. 12 days. And they'll be taken to the diplomatic station, I said. Processed, interviewed, integrated into the new contact diplomatic framework. Yes, that could take years. It could. Ose picked up her tea again. Miles, I am telling you this as your commanding officer. I'm also telling you this as someone who has watched you for 6 years carry something very heavy and never once ask for help with it. She set the cup down. Whatever you need to figure out in the next 12 days, figure it out. I looked at her. That is all, she said. I stood, came to attention briefly. Old habit not required. She'd stopped expecting it years ago and left. Chapter 13. The Education of Miles Corvin. I spent those 12 days differently than I had spent any 12 days I could remember. In the mornings, Lyra dragged me to the observation bay and taught me Velhari star names. She was a patient teacher, which I had not expected. Patient in the way a child is patient when they want something enough, repeating the sounds with small corrections until I got them right. In the afternoons, when Sovereign was strong enough to sit up for extended periods, the three of us would sit together in the medical common area with Oracle translating, and Sovereign would tell me about the Velhari. Their history, their culture, their philosophy of Karath, the guardian concept, and the way it ran through everything from their military tradition to their parenting practices to their architecture. Buildings on the Velhari homeworld were designed with the Karath principle, everything oriented to protect what was inside. We are a species that builds toward the center, Sovereign said. The most important things are always at the heart. The structures, the relationships, the cities, all designed so that what matters most is sheltered. I thought about the relentless, designed outward weapons facing the void, hardened hull facing threats. The human design principle, the dangerous things are on the outside. Take the fight to the enemy. Your species builds outward, Sovereign observed, watching my face. Toward the danger. You put the protection between yourselves and the threat. That's one way to think about it, I said. Both work, he said. The Velhari learn to shelter. The humans I have met learn to stand between. Perhaps they are the same thing from different directions. In the evenings, Lyra and I walked the corridors of the Relentless. She had decided she needed to know the ship. She approached this with systematic thoroughness that was somewhat alarming in a 4-year-old. She wanted to know the name of every section, every crew member, every piece of equipment. The crew, for their part, had completely surrendered. Hard-eyed soldiers crouched down to her level and answered her questions with an earnestness they would never have shown an admiral. The ship's cook, Chief Petty Officer Helena Moss, a woman of 52 who had been cooking for soldiers for 30 years and had the demeanor of someone who has seen too much to be surprised by anything, made Lyra a special portion of sweet ration cake every evening and called her little blue star. Lyra distributed trust carefully but once given, completely. Within a week she had a crew of 63 adults who would, I was fairly certain, have walked into a firefight for her. Chen's knitted hat, it turned out, was a masterwork of careful craft. Dark blue with small silver thread accents along the brim. Lyra wore it constantly. You are going to destroy her when you leave, Chen told me one evening, her voice stripped of its usual armor. We were in the corridor outside the medical bay, speaking quietly. Inside, Lyra was showing Sovereign everything she had learned about the ship's navigation system with the aid of Oracle and the patience of Ensign Vasquez, who had become another of her devoted court. I know, I said. So what are you doing about it? I looked at her. Chen was not a person who asked questions she didn't have opinions on the answer to. Working on it, I said. She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded, and went back to her duties. Chapter 14. A Conversation About Monsters. On the 10th day, Lyra asked me about my face. We were in the observation bay, the usual evening routine. She was sitting in my lap, this had become standard, and she had been quiet for longer than usual. Then she reached up and put her hand on the scarred side of my face, very gently, the way she had done on the first night in the crashed ship. She traced the edge of the scar tissue with 2 careful fingers. "Did it hurt?" Oracle translated. "Yes," I said, "a long time ago." "What made it?" I thought about how to explain this to a 4-year-old across a species gap. I was in a fight, a bad one. Something exploded near me. She processed this. "Did you win the fight?" "We won the war," I said, "eventually." She sat with that. "Then are there more fights? Will there be more?" "Probably," I said. "I'm a soldier. That's what soldiers do." "Is that why people call you a monster?" I looked at her. "Some people call me a monster because of how I look, some because of what I do." "What do you do?" "I fight. I protect. Sometimes I have to do hard things to protect people." "Daddies protect," she said, as if this were a logical argument she was presenting. "My daddy protected us. He got hurt protecting us. Is that what made him a daddy, the protecting?" "Part of it," I said. "Part of it is the loving too." "You love things," she said, with the certainty of a scientist reporting results. "I can tell." "How can you tell?" "You are careful with things you love. You are careful with the stars when you look at them. You are careful with the ship." "You are very careful with me." She paused. "Things that do not love are not careful. Monsters are not careful." I sat with this extraordinary reasoning for a moment. "Then maybe," I said slowly, "I'm not a monster after all." She looked up at me with those amber eyes and said something that Oracle translated as, "I told you." Chapter 15, 12 days. The rendezvous was scheduled for 800. At 7:30, I was in Captain Osai's ready room for the second time. She looked at me across her desk. Then she looked at the document I had placed in front of her. "This is a petition for formal Velhari human kinship recognition under the United Earth Diplomatic Charter," she said. "Yes. This is also a request for a transfer of assignment from the *Relentless to the UES Diplomatic Station at Reach Point 7, where the Velhari will be processed for new contact integration." "Yes." She looked at me, "And this third document?" "An application to the Velhari Cultural Liaison Office, which exists," I checked. "It was established 6 years ago during preliminary Velhari contact negotiations, for formal *Kareth* recognition. It's a Velhari cultural designation, legal standing in their society. It requires the agreement of the child's surviving parent." I paused. "Sovereign Dale has already signed the Velhari portion." Osai was quiet for a very long moment. "Miles," she said, "do you know what you're doing?" "Yes." "You're giving up a combat posting for a diplomatic station. You're pursuing legal and cultural standing with a species we've known for 12 days. You are—" She stopped. "I'm answering a question," I said. "A 4-year-old asked me something important, and I spent 12 days figuring out the answer." Osai looked at the documents for a long moment. Then she picked up her authorization stylus. "The petition requires a CO's endorsement," she said. "I'm giving it." She signed. Part 4, What Home Means. Chapter 16, Lyra. I told Lyra at 7:50. We were in the observation bay. The rendezvous point was visible on the external display, a distant cluster of lights that would resolve into a colony ship and an escort, 10 minutes away. Lyra was standing on the bench, looking at the lights, wearing Chen's hat. I crouched down beside her. She looked at me. "I have something to tell you," I said, Oracle translated. She waited. "When the ship meets your people, I'm going with you." She was very still. "Not forever on this ship," I continued. "Your daddy and you and Velith and the others will go to a place where your people are. I asked to go there too." "Why?" Small voice, not disbelieving, just asking. Because you asked me a question, I said, and I've been thinking about it for 12 days, and I think I have an answer. She looked at me with those ancient amber eyes. Can a monster be a daddy? She said. No, I said, but I think I was wrong about what I am. She waited. I think I'm a Karath, a guardian who forgot he was one for a while, and I think I started again. I think if your daddy agrees and if you want it, I would like to learn how to be that. For you, near you. I looked at her steadily. Not instead of your daddy, he's your daddy, but maybe, as someone else who stands between you and the dark. Oracle translated. Lyra's expression moved through several things I couldn't fully read. Then she stepped off the bench, walked to me. I was still crouching, and put both arms around my neck. Small arms, warm, the toy ovoid pressed against my shoulder. She said something quiet, her mouth near my ear. Oracle translated a second later, but I already knew. Yes, she said. Yes, big safe one. Yes. Chapter 17, Sovereign. Sovereign Dale was standing when I came to the medical bay. Standing properly, carefully, with Velith hovering nearby, but standing. He looked at me as I came in, and I thought, this is a man who has made a decision. Yara Osai told me, he said, about the petition, the diplomatic transfer. She shouldn't have. She was right to. He looked at me steadily. I want to understand your intentions, clearly, with no translator errors. Clearly, I agreed. You want to remain in proximity to my daughter. Yes. You want the Karath designation, the formal cultural recognition. Yes. Why, not hostile, genuinely asking. I looked at him. Because I have been alone for a long time, and I decided that was enough for me. And 12 days ago, your daughter put her hand on my face in the dark and wasn't afraid of me, and I stopped. I think I have things to give that I stopped believing anyone wanted. I think she sees something in me that's real and worth something. I want to honor that. I want to earn it. Sovereign was quiet. She has her mother's eyes, he said finally. Not the color, the sight. He looked at his hands. Her mother would have said the same thing. She always said, Sovereign, the ones worth knowing are the ones who look strange but feel like home. He looked up at me. I am asking you to do something hard, he said. If you take this designation, if you accept what she has offered you, she will need you. She will depend on you. You are a soldier. Your life is dangerous. If you take this and then. I know, I said. I've thought about it. And nothing worth anything is safe, I said. Her mother died. You could die tomorrow. I could die. The universe doesn't give guarantees, but it gives choices, and I choose this. He looked at me for a long, long moment. Then he held out his good hand. The Velhari handshake is different from the human one. It is wrist to wrist rather than palm to palm, a grip that says I will hold you, not just touch you. He had taught it to me on the 8th day. I gripped his wrist, he gripped mine. Karath, he said simply. Thank you, I said. Chapter 18, Chen. I ran into Chen in the corridor on the way back. She looked at me, looked away, looked back. You're really going, she said. I'm really going. She was quiet for a moment. This was unusual for Chen. She'll forget you in 6 months, Chen said. Kids that age, they. She won't, I said, not defensively, certainly. Chen looked at me. You don't know that. She's her mother's daughter, I said. She sees things as they are, she'll remember. Chen was quiet for a longer moment. Then she said, I have 4 nieces and nephews on Earth. I send them terrible presents because I'm bad at buying presents. But they always know when I'm coming back before I tell anyone. I don't know how, kids just, she stopped. You're doing the right thing, Chief, just so you know, in case nobody tells you. This was the longest emotionally honest speech I had heard Chen give in 9 years. Thank you, Corporal, I said. Don't make it weird, she said, and walked away very quickly. Chapter 19, The Rendezvous. The colony ship was called the *Velhari Lanthier, the returning star, and she was large and white and shaped like nothing humanity had built, elegant in the way of a thing designed to carry life across distances. We matched velocity, and the docking procedure took 3 hours of careful maneuvering, with Oracle and the *Lanthier's *AI communicating in the mathematical elegance of Velhari encoding. The crew of the Relentless gathered in a quiet, instinctive farewell formation in the docking bay. 63 people who had known the Velhari for 12 days and would remember them for a lifetime. Lyra walked the line. She had decided this was what was happening, and nobody argued with her. She walked the docking bay slowly, seriously, and stopped in front of each person. Velith translated softly. Some people crouched down to her level. Some just stood and received whatever small word or gesture she offered them. When she got to Chen, she reached up and adjusted Chen's collar, which was crooked. Chen looked like she had been hit. "Little blue star," Moss said when Lyra reached her, and handed her a carefully wrapped package of the sweet ration cake. "For the journey." She reached Osai last. The captain crouched down to her level. They regarded each other. Lyra said something. Velith translated, "You take care of the big safe one's people. He loves them." Osai's expression did something complicated. "I will," she said. "You take care of him." Lyra nodded, solemn as a treaty. Then she came to me and took my prosthetic hand in both of hers and looked up at me. "Ready," she said in English. She had been practicing. "Ready," I said. We crossed the threshold together. Epilogue, Guardian. Reach Point 7, 6 months later. The diplomatic station at Reach Point 7 was nothing like the Relentless. It was large, designed for habitation rather than war, full of light and curved surfaces, and the sounds of a dozen species learning to communicate. The Velhari contingent had their own quarter, beautiful in the way of things designed from the inside out. The Kareth principle, spaces built toward the center, the most important things sheltered at the heart. Sovereign Dale was teaching 3 days a week, Velhari history and language, to a classroom of human diplomatic staff and 2 Keth observers who sat very still and appeared to be learning through some form of concentrated attention. His arm had healed cleanly. He moved with the careful precision of a man who had come through something serious and was grateful for every careful movement. Velith was enrolled in the station's xenolinguistics program and was, according to everyone who worked with her, annoyingly brilliant. The silent boy, his name was Taro, and he had stopped being silent about 2 months after arrival, emerging from his shock gradually, like a plant turning toward light, was building things. Small mechanical things, intricate, that nobody fully understood but that Oracle found architecturally elegant. He and Vasquez, who had transferred to the station for the new contact program, spent hours together with components and questions. Lyra was 4.5 years old, or the Velhari equivalent, and had opinions about everything. She had opinions about the station's color scheme, too much gray, not enough blue. She had opinions about the diplomatic staff's pronunciations of Velhari words, wrong, but improvable. She had opinions about meals. The station cook was acceptable, but Moss was better. She had opinions about the proper way to watch a sunrise, which she had determined required sitting outside on the observation platform in the cold with a blanket and something warm to drink. And she implemented this opinion every morning, and brought whoever was available along by the simple expedient of appearing in front of them, and saying come in a tone that permitted no alternatives. Every morning, she appeared outside my door at 5:30. Every morning, I was already up. We walked to the observation platform together, her hand in mine, or around 2 fingers of my prosthetic hand when she was tired, and we sat and watched the star Reach Point 7 orbited rise over the curve of the station's outer shell. She had stopped asking questions about monsters. I thought about why. I thought she had decided the question was answered, or had been the wrong question to begin with, and had moved on to more interesting inquiries. Like why stars were different colors, and whether the Keth had music, and what had made me decide to be a soldier, and whether the diplomatic station would eventually have more blue in the corridors. On the morning of the 6-month mark, she said, *meals. Lyra, what is the word for a Karath who stays? I looked at her. There is one, she said, I think. Daddy used it once, I cannot remember it. I thought about this. I don't know the Velhari word, I said. What do you think the word should mean? She considered this with great seriousness, watching the rising star. The word should mean, she said finally, someone who was made of hard things, who learned to make a soft place in the middle, so that the small ones have somewhere to go. I looked at this small alien girl who had looked at my ruined face in the dark and thought, safe. I think that's a good word, I said. She nodded, satisfied, and leaned against my arm. You are that word, she said, whatever it is. The star rose over the edge of the station, painting everything gold. Yeah, I said quietly. I think maybe I am. 6 months earlier, a child in the dark put her hand on the face of the thing people called a monster and was not afraid. The universe does not grade on a curve. It only asks what you do next. And word count, words estimated reading time, 60-70 minutes. Genre, HFY Humanity, Sci-Fi First Contact Found Family. Rating, all ages, language, English. Year setting, 2041 story code, Miles 2015.